Hello, everyone. I am Mimi Lichtenstein, and today I am here with Beth Spack. I am very grateful that she's here with us today to talk about Israel. She was born in the United States, but she's been in Israel now for 30 years. So she has a lot of great insights about what it's like to live there and what it's like to live here and how they compare. And we all know recently there's been a few differences. So I just wanted to say thank you, Beth, for coming and welcome to the show.
Mimi, it's really wonderful to be here. Thank you for including us in this amazing event.
Absolutely. Well, Israel is a place for a lot of people that is kind of mysterious, I think, right? There's obviously a lot of things complicated going on in the world right now, and it sort of ebbs and flows over time. It's the center of many religions and history and great culture. And so for us today to be able to dive in and ask you lots of great questions about what to do there, what to see, the different places to go is amazing. So I'm very happy to have you here with us today. And I think you and I will start we'll show a map about Israel, talk about the different areas, and then we'll dive into our usual, all the cool experiences you can have in the different places, the great hotels, the new hotels, over the top ideas, and all that good stuff. So do you want to start us off with the map of Israel and all the different areas that people might want to go visit?
Sure. So first of all, again, Mimi, thank you so much for including us in your program. As Mimi said, my name is Beth. I'm originally from that part of New York called New Jersey, and moved here after university and have been here in the travel business for over 30 years and part of the Travix family for almost a decade. And the really cool thing, like you, is when people ask me what I do, I get to say that I make people's dreams come true. So welcome to Israel. And as you can see, it's a pretty small country, about the size of New Jersey physically. You can drive from the top to the bottom in about 8 hours, obviously much less from side to side. We've got the Med, the Dead, and the Red. So we've got the Mediterranean, we've got the Red Sea down at the bottom, and you can see the Dead Sea right in the middle, right on the border with Jordan. The other blue body of water is the Sea of Galilee. And so desert and rolling green hills and beaches, all in this very, very tiny physical spot.
I have a question for you, Beth. How many people come to Israel having said, really, a lot of what I know about Israel is from watching Fauda, because that was a very popular show in my house for a while. So I'm curious, how much do you hear about that?
More and more.
Really?
It's happening. There are several, and it's amazing how many TV shows are being picked up, because it's not just Fauda, it's also Shtisel, which is about the Orthodox community. And recently there was also a mini series called Unorthodox.
Oh,
right. So there are more and more shows that are popping up, as well as shows that you're getting in America that are based on shows that are created here in Israel and then modified for the American market. So
well, it's like a Hollywood of.
It is. It's one of our great exports.
Okay, great. All right. So when we talk about, the reasons to go to Israel, I personally, Tel Aviv, I think vibrant, cool, hip, lots of technology and innovation, great rooftops and restaurants and all of that good stuff. Then there's also the spiritual reasons and the religious reasons that people want to come, and just to see such a big, diverse group of people and religions in a very, very small part of the world. When you're working with people who, Americans who are coming there, are people coming with sort of different reasons for coming, that they want to have a very, more religious experience or learn more about that versus the culture and that sort of thing?
I think the reasons that people come are as varied as the people themselves that are coming, whether they are coming for spiritual or looking into their heritage, whether they are looking just to have a great time. And I think their agenda also changes while they're here, because I think there are sometimes people who come expecting just to have a vacation and end up connecting to the country in a way they didn't expect.
Mm.
And likewise, the other way, people who are coming for a religious pilgrimage or in search of heritage and wind up encountering this amazing food and wine that they did not expect to have at all. So I think we're full of surprises.
Okay. Excellent. All right. So should we start with just a quick overview of each of the different areas, starting with Tel
Sure.
Aviv, your big
We'll
city?
just take a little bit of a tour around the country just to give people a sense of where things are. So normally people would land at Ben Gurion Airport, which is just about 20 minutes from Tel Aviv. You can see marked right on the Mediterranean coast in the middle of the country. It's our cultural hub. It's our business hub. You can see that beautiful coastline with the skyscrapers, which 20 years ago did not exist. This is all very new. You're in the foreground, you're seeing Old Jaffa, which was the original city as it started to grow up the coast. It's still a very small city, but it is, as you said, look at this captures the spirit and the life in Tel Aviv. Stop for a coffee at a little kiosk on Rothschild Boulevard with people getting around on bikes and scooters, and that's how they go to work and how they play. And it is very much a city that never sleeps.
And that has nothing to do with how much espresso that they drink.
Well, you can see how much. We continue up the coast, and this region of the country along the Mediterranean coast, all the way up from north of Tel Aviv up to the border with Lebanon. You can go on to the next picture, which gives us a great overview of the Baha'i Gardens in Haifa. Looking down from the top of the Carmel Mountains to the Mediterranean Sea. Haifa is one of our main ports. We have two, and if you said people are coming on cruises, they would be coming. Haifa would be one of the ports. But you can see a little bit of how the region combines the history. You're looking at a 2,000-year-old aqueduct in Caesarea, or the port in Akko. Where you can go for great fish, and you can see a picture of the spices in that market. Or right on the border, there are the grottos of a place like Rosh Hanikra, where you take the cable car down into these beautiful natural grottos. So again, it's that combination of nature and culture and history.
Oh, I skipped one. There we go.
Okay, so we would then travel east through the Upper Galilee to the area around the Sea of Galilee. And that picture you're looking at there is a boat sailing on the Sea of Galilee with the mountains of the Golan Heights in the background. The Galilee is also, again, we've traveled 2 hours north of Tel Aviv, and from the flat lowlands of the coast, we're coming up to these mountains and rolling green hills and opportunities for fun and nature and adventure. But at the same time, that next slide is going to show us that this is also a place very connected to tradition and spirituality and religion. You're seeing that first church on the left is the Mount of Beatitudes, where tradition says that Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount. And on the left is a stone from an ancient synagogue in Magdala, actually discovered completely by accident as they were trying to build a new hotel on the shores of the Sea of Galilee, and unearthed a 2,000-year-old fishing village, home of Mary Magdalene.
Wow. Beautiful. It's amazing in that part of the world. In Greece, too, I remember the first time I went to the Acropolis Museum, you walk over a glass floor because when they were digging up the Acropolis Museum, they found a bunch of, historical artifacts and buildings and such. You can't get rid of that. So beautiful.
So if you're going to just show us the map a little bit, because right smack in the middle of the country, if Israel were actually your body, it's sort of right where your belly button would be. You're looking at the capital city of Jerusalem, and certainly no visit to Israel would be complete without spending some time in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
Jerusalem is incredibly rich in history. We talk about it being the home, it's a holy city to three faiths, which intertwine and interweave in their histories and in the sites that we're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at, in the top right, celebrations at the Western Wall, one of the holiest sites in Judaism. And yet only a short walk away on the bottom left, you're looking at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where you walk the final stations of the cross and where tradition says that Jesus was crucified.
Mm.
And we're not just about the ancient history of 2,000 years ago. We also talk about the modern world and the birth of a modern state outside the Knesset, our parliament, where you can see the menorah, which is the symbol of the state. You're looking at that white structure is at where the shrine of the book, where the Dead Sea Scrolls are housed. And if you look at it architecturally, it was designed to look like the top of the ceramic jugs in which the scrolls were found. So again, it's taking the old and drawing it in to blend it with the new. And a visit wouldn't be the same without a plate of hummus and some good pita.
We all know we will eat very well when we're visiting Israel, that's for sure.
Right. So just about an hour out of Jerusalem, we find ourselves in the desert, the Judean desert, ready to explore the Dead Sea, where we talk about the unsinkable swim. Can't swim, you can only float. Has great medicinal values, good for the skin.
And the water is stunning. The color of the water is so blue and light and clear. It's
very, very high in the minerals that do that to it. And if we look at that next picture, that next slide, we're seeing, of course, one of the highlights of is King Herod's desert fortress 2,000 years ago on the top of Masada. A very, very powerful historical story. But at the same time, you're going to look in that picture in the bottom right-hand corner, which is, I am going to touch a moment on unique experiences, because that's an opportunity to actually sail out onto the Dead Sea, which is not something that everyone does. And we had a chance to do it in this past year here in the office, and it was absolutely fascinating to learn what we did about the Dead Sea, including the fact that they've actually found life in it. So it's the sort of Dead Sea.
Okay. All right. Next, we go down to the south part.
Deep desert. This is down into the deep desert, and you can see how much of the country actually is this desert. When you look at the pictures, you can really see that the terrain has changed completely. You're looking here at the amazing Ramon crater, a natural formation that is unique in the world, and very, very cool to explore. And there's lots of desert fun things to do. If you look at that next picture, whether it's a Jeep ride out into the crater or a little sand dune boogie board. And of course, if you just need a chance to kick back and relax, you can see a glimpse of some of those hotels we'll talk about later.
Some nice hotels, and also the glamping area of Israel. So we'll talk about that. My kiddos and I did the sandboarding in Morocco on the desert once and loved that. Super fun for teenagers and older kids.
And we are you're going to, if you'll just go up one slide to the map, just to give people a sense of the proximity, you can see where Petra is and how it's very, very easy for us to combine after your Israel adventure, to combine it with jump over the border to do a couple of days in Jordan. Primarily, people want to go to Petra. And when you see the pictures on that next slide, you can feel like Indiana Jones and really appreciate the beauty of this site.
Beautiful. I think the building that's in the back of that, what is that building? Do you know?
That is the treasury. At the end, in order to enter Petra, you walk through this cavern, which is called the Sikh.
Okay.
And when you get to the end of it, you come out to this amazing structure that is carved into the stone. And as I said, anybody who saw Last Crusade, Indiana Jones with Sean Connery, this is where those final scenes were filmed. They were outside of the treasury, built by the Nabateans several thousand years ago.
Okay, beautiful. And it looks like layered in gold.
That's just the sunlight reflecting off the red stone sands. It's really beautiful.
It is really beautiful. Okay, so that's an amazing overview, but there's more. As far as experiences go, food is at the top of the list for a lot of people when they travel, not only just eating, out in restaurants and things like that, but having other cool experiences. You want to dive into a little bit about some of the opportunities on trips to Israel?
I would say that going back to what you were talking about at the beginning, I think people are very surprised by the culinary experiences that they can have in Israel. Whether it is the gourmet cuisine, the new Israeli kitchen, as I call it, that was evolved out of young chefs growing up in their mothers' and grandmothers' kitchens, going off into the world to learn technique and interesting ways to combine flavors, and then coming back to Israel and incorporating all of that together into what we do call the new Israeli kitchen, with opportunities for street food and beautiful gourmet restaurants, and then a chance to roll up your sleeves and actually try it yourself. By going in and having a hands-on cooking class in someone's home to learn how to make some of the local dishes.
And you had sent me, which I think we can just play a minute of too, or a few seconds of, the video about what it's like in one of the Israeli markets. So I'm just going to play that for a second.
Go ahead.
What a great place to get a feel of the Jerusalem culinary culture, where old traditions meet modern trends. Our Travis Shook experience offers insider encounters for our guests who love culinary adventures. Join our experts as they take you to meet interesting people, hear their fascinating stories, and of course, taste their wonderful food.
For most people, having experiences like that while they're traveling, it's, enriching by so much taste, smells, senses all around. So
Absolutely.
The visits to the market by themselves would be fun and experiential. But then if you add to it doing a cooking class or meeting with a chef and going shopping to go to the market to get the food, to then go back to someone's home and make the meals, is definitely some of the highlights that I've ever experienced in lots of different countries in the world.
And it's something that we are able to incorporate in several of the regions around the country that we talked about, whether it's a culinary tour in the market in Tel Aviv, or that shopping and cooking, what we would call shuk and cook, at the market in Jerusalem, or at the home of an Arab family in Galilee, where you step into the kitchen, put on an apron, and roll grape leaves together.
Nice. A lot of cultural connections, that's for sure.
Right.
And then there's wine.
That they've been making wine in this part of it here in Israel for over 3,000 years. So there's a lot going on historically, and the modern wine culture in Israel is absolutely amazing, with award-winning wines being produced by some of the major as well as many of the boutique wineries around the country. So it's the opportunity to taste a lot of those wines and to meet with the vintners and hear their stories, whether it's the two professors who just decided on a whim to go and start making wine, or, the guy who converted his garage into a winery. They all have a story to tell, as well as the ones which have been handed down from generation to generation, learning the wonderful world of wine.
And it's amazing how often in this business you talk with people who, happened to go somewhere one time and fell in love with it. So they decide to sort of, sell everything, leave their startup and, go live in Israel or the Caribbean or Italy and start, a vineyard or a bed and breakfast. And so a combination of those stories or just the people who are obviously Israelis who have lived there forever running these, it's quite an eclectic mix of people to be able to meet and hear all of their stories and why they do what they do.
Right. I agree 100%. And go from the food a little bit to that wild experience of urban exploration. Each of the cities has stories to tell. Mm-hmm. And with our guides and with local experts to be able to explore and get to know those cities up close and personal. On a graffiti tour. Graffiti is such an indicator of what's going on in a city, what's going on in a country, and to walk around and then have a chance to leave your own mark on the city by creating your own graffiti to contribute to the walls of Tel Aviv.
Oh, that would be
fun. Or say you're interested in fashion and that's your thing. Mm-hmm. Meeting with designers, talking about the textile world that is being created and generated here in Israel, or just enjoying a bit of the nightlife, mm-hmm. of which we are not lacking.
No, you guys like to stay up late. And then, so as far as experiences, they're a little bit more on, the religious, if someone was coming for more religious reasons, or even if they just wanted to have that be a little bit of their trip to Israel. Tell us about those.
Sure. As we said, I think everybody connects to Israel on some level through their own background, whether it's on a religious level, on a spiritual level. So it might mean a private baptism in the Jordan River. And for believers, that's an incredibly powerful experience in the same way that for many Jews, walking up to the Western Wall and being able to put a note in the wall, as is the tradition, as a special blessing or a special message. And I do want to emphasize that the context of religion does range really from the spiritual to the more orthodox religious observance and everything in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing for people who their motivation is to come to Israel, and it comes from so many different directions. But when you go there, you can learn more about your religion and your history and background, but you can also be obviously exposed to so many other ones that maybe in the United States in your community you're not exposed to. So it's a great way to learn not only more about your religion, but other people's religions as well.
Sure.
Yeah, this is a good topic for conversation. Obviously, there's always a lot going on in your little corner of the world. So tell us a little bit about the experiences people can have talking about these world political events and, discussions.
So often people come and their only exposure to what is going on in this region of the world is what they're seeing on their local news. Mm-hmm. So we always think that we're able to enhance the context by arranging them for them to meet with a geopolitical specialist, a journalist who's worked in been the person covering the office of the prime minister for 20 years and has seen many prime ministers come and go. And sometimes it's just an opportunity to help put things in order and help understand a little bit better who the players are in the game and how those relationships have evolved historically and what is going on today.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. As a mother of 3 teenagers, right, I always viewed travel as educational and experiential educational. And this is a perfect example of teenagers or college kids who are studying this area of the world, politics. It's such a great place to go and actually feel and see it yourself rather than just reading about it in a book.
we'll talk about this for a moment, because I think this is a very, very powerful encounter that we're able to arrange for people. And that's meeting with the young people who are serving in the Israel Defense Force, in the IDF. An opportunity to meet with soldiers who are patrolling the north, or an opportunity to meet with Air Force pilots at our Squadron Simulator, where you can actually make believe, I guess, simulate your flight over Israel, as if you yourself were an airline pilot in an F-16.
Wow. Amazing. And look at this. This to me is such like a great photo, capturing the everyday Israel street of people just hanging out, drinking espresso, maybe having a glass of wine, chilling out for the afternoon.
That's where you're going to find people after work. And I do also agree that I think this picture very much captures the spirit of, you can see that nothing's fancy. And you were showing that wonderful slide with my colleague Tzvi earlier in the market. And what's happening now here in Jerusalem, in particular in the market, as the shops start to close and those tables and chairs just start to spill out into the passageways, and what was the market hawking vegetables and fish during the day is now a central hub for nightlife. So it's a really fascinating thing to observe.
And I think you were telling me one of the markets, actually, which one was it? Maybe one of the bigger ones, which is like the maybe more popular, most popular market during the day, turns into a huge night scene.
Right, that's what I was just talking about in Macheaneh Yehuda Market. That is the market that Tzvi was walking through in that video clip that you showed, which, as far as you could tell, was a market.
Yeah.
But as the sun goes down and everybody close up their stalls and they're no longer selling fish and cucumbers, and here you have a little bit of our rooftop nightlife, where the views can change from the Mediterranean in the background to the bright lights of the city of Tel Aviv, and you can kick back and have a glass of wine or catch up with friends.
What are some of the more popular ones, or what are some of your favorite rooftops that you know are popular with kind of the younger Israeli crowd?
I'm not young anymore, Mimi.
I don't mean to go to them every weekend. I still would want to go to them when I was there.
You know, I'm going to tell you that you asked that question, but we are, as everything else, an incredibly fluid and dynamic. So there are actually lists that keep us updated, and I don't want to say on a daily basis, but maybe on a monthly basis, because the trends and what's in literally changes that quickly. And for me, it's, we talk about what's the best. No, it's what am I in the mood for? Do I want to go sit on top of the Norman and look at the bright lights of Tel Aviv? Or do I want to go up and see what's the cool rooftop in the neighborhood of Neve Tzedek that will allow me to overlook the beach? That's that view from the top of Herbert Samuel, which I happen to love.
Okay. Well, that's a good pointer then, because I look at that and I want to go hang out there too. So I'm going to put that on my list.
I'll meet you there.
Okay. And then, so behind the scenes tours, we definitely often have a lot of clients who appreciate being able to sort of go behind the curtain and get a glimpse into different places, either be before or after hours, or just to get a little bit more of a private tour of a certain place. Where is this particular one?
This particular one is part of a new area that is right behind the Western Wall. A new part that has been exposed of what people might be familiar, that is along the Western Wall tunnels. And what you're looking at is a 2,000-year-old ritual bath that was part of the water systems that provided water to the temple 2,000 years ago. And that you're actually looking at a picture of us, the traffic staff, and as you can see, out with our masks as we were taking advantage of being able to do some behind the scenes stuff for ourselves during the past year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's transition a little bit to your beautiful hotels. I know you actually have a lot of building going on. Some of the ones that we're opening up this year are a little more delayed, but I'd love to dive into maybe a few favorites. First one is the rooftop that you just mentioned is at the Norman. So
it is. So you can see this. You can look. You're looking at this. The Norman is 50. Rooms and suites, a small luxury hotel that was built into 2 Bauhaus buildings. That is original Bauhaus architecture with the roof up on the pool of one building and an orange orchard in between the 2 separate buildings that connect through the garden. And it took them 8 years to renovate. So the hotel in and of itself is a wonderful story, and they're really impeccable in service, and also the restaurants they have are great.
Okay. And there's a lot of outdoor time in Israel, right? Because the weather there is good to have. So I think to have, whether it be a rooftop pool or a rooftop garden or just a rooftop to hang out at when you're there is always a good idea. And then
Right.
the Ritz is obviously on the marina. Tell us a little bit
Sure.
about
The Ritz Carlton is in Herzliya, which is just north of Tel Aviv. One of the great things about the Ritz is it has unusually large rooms. So people who are used to going, particularly like European city center hotels where you can stand in the middle of the bed and touch both walls. So if you are looking for a little bit more of a spacious accommodation, the rooms at the Ritz are really, and again, they also have a rooftop pool. Well, we don't waste we don't want to waste any of the landscape. So we can put it up on the roof, as well as a wonderful restaurant in that hotel, and really only 20 minutes north of Tel Aviv. So we do consider Herzliya part of the greater Tel Aviv if you are a Ritz Carlton fan.
Okay. Good to know. And how long has the Ritz been there?
20.
A while. It's not brand new. Yeah.
No.
Okay.
But hey, listen, if it's not 2,000 years old here, then it's new.
Then it's new. Good point. And this looks stunning with a beautiful view. Tell us about.
So Mitzbehamim, which is a property that's been around in the Galilee for a very long time, was just 2 years ago taken over by the Israel chain, which did a very lovely renovation, keeping the style of this country inn. And you can see the beautiful view of the Sea of Galilee in the background. It is a full service spa hotel, does not allow children under the age of 10. And they're also pretty picky about cell phones, particularly when you're in public spaces. But after, if you're going up north in the middle of your tour for a couple of days, it's a nice place to be able to plan half a day to kick back, relax, have a nice massage or a facial, enjoy the pool, or again, sit out on that beautiful balcony with gin and tonic, enjoying the view.
Absolutely. I think, throwing in a place like that where you actually are expecting to stay there and enjoy the hotel and enjoy your room in the middle of the chaos of, urban, go see this, go eat here, go to this market. It's a great way to be able to make it through 8 days of, seeing lots of good stuff. And then the King David, obviously the iconic.
The King David, sure.
Yeah.
The King David is the flagship hotel of Israel. It's where the kings and queens and princes and diplomats stay when they're here. And it has a very big, very wonderful history, but also lives up to its reputation in classic hotel service.
And another classic hotel brand, the Waldorf.
It's a classic brand, but it's very new to us. It's only been here for about 4 years. And again, that combination of old and new, because what you're looking at in the foreground and in the background, there's seem to be 2 buildings. And that foreground was actually an Ottoman hotel during the Turkish period when the Turks were here ruling the land. And they actually erected scaffolding and gutted the entire hotel.
Wow.
Behind this, and then built it back into the facade. It was absolutely fascinating to watch. And since they wanted it to be bigger, they also built a new wing in the back that you can see in the background. So again, it's that combination of old and new that makes Jerusalem, I think, so incredibly special.
And just out of curiosity, this is a random question, but in the bottom left corner with the windows, is that a jewelry shop? Do you know?
Yes.
Is it called H. Stern?
It is.
Oh, that's I'm on a board with Ronaldo Stern. And
well,
that's a jewelry shop.
There several of the 5-star hotels in Israel. The Vista at Hilton, the King David, do have branches of H. Stern conveniently located in their lobbies.
Awesome. I'll have to let him know. Okay. The Mamilla Hotel. This looks like a beautiful rooftop.
Also, this is one of the rooftops in Jerusalem. And just so that you know that even if you're coming during our more wintry or potentially rainy times, they do glass it in so that even in the winter time, there's about a week in the fall and a week in the spring when we can't use the venue because they're erecting the winter glass or taking it down, but that means we can pretty much use this space all year long, and it has a wonderful rooftop restaurant. And this is in contrast to the more classic King David. The Mamilla has a very modern feel with a very chic cigar bar.
All about fitting the hotel with the client.
Correct.
How about this one?
It just makes me sad because I'd rather be there right now.
Who wouldn't be?
Rishit is, again, you talked about the Negev Desert and the Ramon Crater, and here in the middle of nowhere, they have erected a beautiful complex with a resort feel to it, with sitting out in that pool overlooking the crater. Spacious, comfortable rooms, really good food, and again, an opportunity to combine getting out and doing things with just being able to kick back and relax.
Yes, stunning. Good way to chill out in the middle of your trip as well. And the Six Senses. So Six Senses is building quite a few hotels. I think yours is opening this year. They have one opening up in Iceland, I think in 2022. It looks, I assume this is a rendering.
These are a combination of some photos, some rendering. They're scheduled to open in August. So they're pretty much there. And a genuinely luxury property with the price to go along with the
level of luxury, yes.
The standard that they have. And again, understanding that you are in the middle of nowhere. It's not like, let's go out to dinner tonight.
Yes, it's a destination. I mean, there's no reason to stay at Six Senses if you're going to be out every day from 9 until midnight. Right. Is the picture on the left here a suite, penthouse, or is it part of the common area of the hotel?
No, that is the luxury suite.
Okay, that's going on my list. The luxury suite at the new Six Senses. And then, if perhaps you don't have the budget for the Six Senses, or you do and you just want to be a little bit more adventurous, we have glamping.
We do. I'm a person that prefers a nice shower at the end of the day. But we do have an opportunity for people who do want to feel a little bit more rustic and out under the stars, particularly down in the desert. We do have glamping options that we can provide
Mhm. And by
For
the way, this looks like a very nice setup this isn't like your backyard camping or throw your stuff in the back of your car sort of setup.
we can do that too, though, if you'd like.
Okay, good to know. We have lots of different ranges of clients, and for a
Sure.
lot of people, even if you have the budget for the Six Senses, and maybe I would highly recommend if you are doing glamping in the Six Senses that you glamp first and do Six Senses second. But even so, you want to be outside. You want to enjoy the sights and the stars and the beauty of just being outside in nature. And if you have kids, one of my favorites is unconventional accommodations, and tents and glamping go right there, fit that perfectly. Kids would love it.
So we do have those, as you saw, both Bray Sheet and Six Senses. We do have some wonderful desert destination hotels that also get combined with some of that adventure with the stargazing. Because when you're out in the desert, there's nothing like it to be able to see the stars that you don't really get to see when you're living much closer to city life or even suburban life. And for those people who are looking for a little bit of adventure and off the beaten path, we do have the opportunity for rappelling. And you can see this young woman rappelling down the side of the Ramon crater. And at the same token, we can go and adopt the whole Via Ferrata culture that is spreading around the world. That's taking place here more in the north with the rock climbing and a little bit more of the hardcore adventure as opposed to the soft adventure that many families might be looking to incorporate for a day or here or there in their Israel program.
And I will say, Via Ferratas we love Via Ferratas. There are some easier ones and some bigger, more elaborate, higher ones. So there's a range. And in Israel, correct me if I'm wrong, I know you have the one in the north. Are there multiple ones, or is that the only one?
It's very new. It's a very new concept here. And even the one in the north has really been born out in the last year and are now adapting themselves for tourists as well.
Okay. This is a beautiful shot. Anyone who wants to go on a balloon, it's always a nice way to see a country.
So when we're looking at a little bit of those specialty things, the bird's eye view that you can get from a sunrise balloon landing to a lovely picnic breakfast out in the fields, or likewise taking a helicopter ride to be able to do Jerusalem or the Sea of Galilee from the air is also sometimes an experience that people like to get a different perspective.
I think putting helicopters and balloons always, I like to put those in a little bit of the over the top category because they're always a little bit of a splurge, but the visibility you get and the perspective that you get is such a nice dimension to being on the ground as well. And so in addition to those, I know you have another new hotel opening. And when you and I were talking about perhaps the most over the top place you could stay if you were coming to Israel, this was the top of your list. Tell us about this.
The David Kampinski Tel Aviv, which is scheduled to open in October. You are looking at a rendering of their David Penthouse Suite, which is 3 stories with its own private pool, internal elevator, 2 bedrooms, living room, dining room. I would say everything but the kitchen sink, but it has that too.
And that pool is stunning.
Overlooking the Mediterranean.
Beautiful. It reminds me a little bit of the one at the top of the Silo Hotel in Cape Town. The see-through walls, and it's just would be a magical setting. So obviously not as many of us are traveling right now. And I expect that, hopefully more people will be traveling as the months and years ahead. And that's great timing because perhaps by the time you get to Israel, if you'd like to stay here, it will be done and ready for you.
Absolutely.
When you and I were talking the other day, it was about a little bit about the weather. So you told me, which I didn't realize, Israel has 300 days of sunshine a year.
Sure. We are in the desert. So we do have seasons where we have a little bit of spring and a little bit of fall. We have a lot of summer where it can be hot, and it along the coast or around the Sea of Galilee, it is hot and humid. In Jerusalem, It is hot during the day and pleasantly cool at night because of our elevation. So even if you're coming in the dead of summer, you still need to bring us something to put on for the cool nights in Jerusalem. And again, going down into the desert where it's going to be hot and dry. And again, you travel an hour in any direction, and your topography and weather can change pretty radically.
And would you say for people who are coming to Israel for their first time, maybe it will be their only time? Obviously, so much about what you and I do is customize things based on different people and their interests and what they'd like to see and how old their kids are and all of that. But what would you say would be a good overview if somebody had, let's say, a solid 8 days to be in Israel? How much time in each place if you're, let's assume, a family with teenagers, they're all, the whole family's active, they're a little adventurous. What would you suggest?
Well, I'm going to steal a little bit more and say we're going to talk 8 to 10 days.
Okay.
Because I think we're talking about 2 to 3 nights in Tel Aviv, get your bearings, familiarize yourself with the city, travel up the coast, and spend another 2 to 3 nights in the Galilee, doing the sites around the Sea of Galilee up to the Golan Heights, and then coming down to Jerusalem, where you do need at least 3 or 4 days to really do the sites, spend time in the historical sites, the new city, and we can do the trip to Masada as a 1-day trip out of Jerusalem because it's just that hour and a half there in each direction. That would be our basic. If you then wanted to add on excursions down to the south to places like the Ramon Crater or add on trips to Petra, we'd need a little bit more time in order to accommodate that.
It's so hard. I mean, it's the size of New Jersey, right? But you still need more than a week. You still need, even 2 weeks. You can't see it all.
I'm allowed to say this because I'm from New Jersey.
Yeah.
There are more interesting things to see here.
It's so funny to think about, right? Like if you had 2 weeks in New Jersey, seems like it would be more than enough. That's for sure. I have relatives in New Jersey, so
right.
It is a remarkably green state, actually. It's surprising before you go there, but
it is the Garden State for a reason.
It is the Garden State, right? It has that name for a reason, so it's getting a bad rap. But as far as sort of tips or things for people to think about when they're planning a trip, one thing that you and I talked about before we came on today is a little bit about the uncertainty of the situation of what's going on in Israel. If you're planning a trip today for 6 months or a year from now, it's one of those places where things could change between now and then. How does that work when people are planning something as far as deposits and refunds and cancellation policies? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we pride ourselves on being extremely flexible. We, as we have been for this past year as well. And we understand the logistics of being in this part of the world. And we want to encourage people to come. And in the occasions where things might be more difficult here and people might need to change their plans, we are very flexible and we do our best to help them reschedule, restructure, reform in order to be able to accommodate making their dreams come true.
I think that gives people a little bit more confidence about planning it, far, far in advance. And then the other thing that I always like to bring up when people are going to this broader part of the world, that is that Saturday and Sunday, that is not the weekend. Tell us a little bit about, whether it be Christmas, Saturday and Sunday, what to expect when you're there.
So our weekend starts from Friday afternoon all the way through Saturday. Saturday is our Sabbath, when you would find some things, but not all things, closed. And in our weekend mentality, Sunday is a regular work day here. And as you and I were discussing, so is Christmas Day. Christmas here is not as you would, it's not jingle bells and beautiful store windows and the music that we hear in elevators while you're busy shopping for Christmas presents. This is not a Christian part of the world per se. You can find places where there is a midnight mass, but it is not as a country a holiday that it's not a day off.
It's
Even
good
when we
people.
and when we go out for New Year's Eve, January 1st is not a day off either.
It's not.
Nope.
Oh, that's good to know. Well, most of the people who are coming aren't going to be working while they're there anyway, so it wouldn't be
Right.
too impactful.
We'd be happy for them to be
They
able to come and celebrate.
Yes, they can stay out as late as all of you, but they get to sleep in the next day.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a great overview of Israel. I think lots of people are super curious about coming there who have never been, and you've given us so many reasons to come, from the culture to the, every day, even right now, the Fauda experience and seeing what it's like, and eating the amazing food, and lots of really cool and fascinating people to meet. Deserts, cities, nightlife, day life, markets. It's sort of like a feast for the senses, right?
Absolutely. And I think when we talk a little bit about Israel as the innovation nation, I hope that everybody will just sort of think about all the things that they touch on their daily life that are originated here. I know you and I had talked about the fact that cherry tomatoes were actually engineered here in Israel. So we're going to invite everybody watching the next time that they have a cherry tomato to think about planning their next trip here to Israel.
Well, I have a 15-year-old who eats cherry tomatoes like candy. So I'm going to tell him that, and he's going to be thinking about our next trip to Israel.
Super.
Thank you so much, Beth. Have a great
Mimi,
day.
thank you so much. It's really been wonderful spending this time with you. And we're going to look forward to welcoming your guests here very soon.
I agree. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.